Stickman had one simple goal: get rich. Not slowly, not someday, not when he's 65. He wanted it faster. So he did what almost everyone does at the beginning. He started buying stocks. At first, it felt amazing. He bought a company he believed in. The price went up. And just like that, he felt like a genius. This is easy, he thought. So he bought more stocks, more risk, more confidence. Until one day, everything dropped hard. One of his stocks fell 20% in a week, another dropped 35%, and one just kept going down, and down, and down. Stickman didn't sleep that night. He kept refreshing his portfolio, watching the numbers fall, wondering, did I just lose everything? Now here's the part no one tells you. Most people don't lose money because they picked bad companies. They lose money because they panic. So Stickman did what many beginners do after getting burned. He quit, sold everything, and said, stocks are too risky. But then he met another Stickman. This one looked different, calm, relaxed, almost bored. While the market was crashing, he wasn't even checking his portfolio. So Stickman asked, what are you doing differently? And the other Stickman said, I don't pick individual stocks most of the time. I invest through ETFs, and that changed everything. So let's break this down, because there are many ways to invest. You can invest in stocks, ETFs and funds, crypto, real estate, gold, and more. But in this video, we're focusing on one specific decision: how you invest in the stock market. Because inside the stock market, there are two main approaches. You either pick individual companies, or you invest in a collection of companies through ETFs. That's the real choice here. An ETF is basically a basket. Instead of buying one company, you're buying hundreds, sometimes even thousands. For example, when you buy an S&P 500 ETF, you're not betting on one company. You're betting on the entire market. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all of them at the same time. Now this is where things get interesting, because ETFs solve one of the biggest problems in investing: risk. Let's go back to Stickman. The first one, the one buying individual stocks. If he puts all his money into one company, and that company crashes, he's done. But with an ETF, if one company fails, it barely matters, because the others keep growing. It's like this. If one tree in a forest dies, the forest still lives. And that's why ETFs are so powerful. They give you diversification without needing to think too much. But that's not the only advantage. There's something even more important, something beginners underestimate: peace of mind. When you own individual stocks, you have to constantly ask yourself, is this still a good company? Should I sell? What if I'm wrong? You check earnings, news, competitors. It never stops. But ETFs? They do the work for you. Bad companies get removed. Better ones take their place, automatically. Which means less stress, less decision-making, less mistakes. And ironically, that's exactly why many ETF investors outperform stock pickers. Not because they're smarter, but because they do less. But before you think ETFs are perfect, they're not. There's a trade-off. There's always a trade-off. Because while ETFs protect you from big losses, they also limit your upside. Let's say you invested early in a company like Apple, or Nvidia, or Tesla. You could have made 10 times, 20 times, even more. That doesn't happen with ETFs, because when one company explodes, it's just a small part of the basket. So instead of massive gains, you get steady growth, slow, boring, predictable, and for some people, that's not exciting enough. Now let's talk about individual stocks again. Because they do have something ETFs don't: control. When you pick your own stocks, you decide everything: what to buy, when to sell. You can build a portfolio that reflects your beliefs, your ideas, your convictions. Now, important clarification here. You can also invest in themes like AI, clean energy, or healthcare through ETFs. There are ETFs for almost every sector and trend. The difference is this: with ETFs, you're buying a pre-built basket of companies. With individual stocks, you're choosing exactly which companies go into your portfolio. So instead of owning 50 AI-related companies, you might pick just 2 or 3 that you personally believe will win. And that's a completely different level of control. And then there's the biggest attraction of all: the dream. The dream of finding the one, the stock that changes everything. And that's powerful, but it's also dangerous. Because for every winner, there are hundreds of losers. And this is where most people fail. Not because they're stupid, but because they underestimate something critical: how hard it is to consistently pick winners. Even professional investors struggle to beat the market. Over long periods of time, most of them fail. So what makes beginners think they can do better? And yet, people still try. Because stock picking feels active. It feels smart. It feels like you're in control. But control can be an illusion, because the market doesn't care what you think. Now here's something even more subtle. Something most people don't realize. You can actually do ETFs wrong. Stickman made this mistake too. After learning about ETFs, he got excited. Too excited. He bought one ETF, then another, then another. Tech ETF, healthcare ETF, global ETF, emerging markets ETF. Before he knew it, he had 20 ETFs. And he thought, I'm diversified. But in reality, he just bought the same companies over and over again. Apple, Microsoft, Google, appearing in multiple ETFs. He wasn't diversifying, he was duplicating. And this is called overdiversification. At that point, your portfolio becomes so spread out that even your winners don't matter. Everything just averages out. So instead of building wealth faster, you slow yourself down. That's why many experienced investors keep it simple. 3 to 5 ETFs. That's it. Now here's the real question. Which one is better, stocks or ETFs? The answer is, it depends on you, not your intelligence, not your income, not your age, your personality. If you check your portfolio every day, stocks will destroy you. If you panic when things drop, stocks will destroy you. If you don't have time to research, stocks will destroy you. But if you're patient, disciplined, and okay with slow growth, ETFs will quietly make you rich. On the other hand, if you love analyzing companies, if you enjoy the process, if you can handle volatility, stocks can work. But here's what most smart investors eventually realize. You don't have to choose just one. The best strategy is often both. Most of your money in ETFs, a smaller portion in individual stocks. That way, you get stability and opportunity. You protect yourself while still giving yourself a chance to win big. And that's exactly what Stickman did. He rebuilt his portfolio, slowly. This time, he put most of his money into ETFs, and with a smaller portion, he picked a few companies he truly believed in. Now, when the market drops, he doesn't panic. And when a stock takes off, he still benefits. He's not chasing. He's not guessing. He's investing. And over time, that's what actually works. Because in the end, Investing isn't about being right once. It's about not being wrong, over and over again. Before we finish, quick reminder, this is not financial advice. This video is for educational purposes only. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. So if you're just starting, keep it simple. Don't try to outsmart the market. Build a system that protects you from yourself. Because the biggest risk isn't the market, it's your decisions inside it. And once you understand that, everything changes. If you found this helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because I break down investing simple. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.